We planted our orchard in 2021 and we dreamed of these trees one day overflowing with so much fruit that we'd have no idea what to do with it all. Well, fast forward 4 years and that day has come. We just harvested hundreds of pounds of peaches along with several plums, all from 4 young fruit trees. Now to figure out that next part, what do we do with it all? We figured out some easy methods of preserving all of this fruit in a way that's doable and will allow us to enjoy this goodness for the whole year ahead.
Live free or die, Clara, okay?
The morning started by harvesting plums from our one plum tree that had started producing. We had a bowl full of plums that was starting to get overripe on the counter that we needed to do something with ASAP. So we grabbed the rest of the ripe ones from the tree and headed back to turn those into a plum sauce. I'll share more about that recipe soon. That afternoon, we were planning to harvest all of our peaches. We had several very full branches hanging down pretty low and peaches that were starting to scatter all over the ground, so it was definitely time. We would have loved to have gotten to harvesting earlier in the week, but we had other things going on, so this was the day that we had set aside to make it happen. We headed out with our bins after lunch to wash them before harvesting, and with one glance of our peach trees across the field, we knew something was terribly wrong. After giving our bins a good scrub, we headed to our orchard, not knowing exactly what we would find. Since we had harvested plums just that morning, one of the main branches of a tree had completely broken off.
Yeah.
So this was the same tree?
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it the same one?
Yeah, that's the other one. This is the same tree. Well, I guess that whole branch is coming down.
Kaputskis.
Yeah, it was just standing upright this morning. I mean, the tree should make it, right?
Yeah, I mean,
Just left
harvesting it
branch.
will certainly help kind of salvage the rest of the tree, but that whole branch is going to be
Gone, so.
gone.
And we should get that one and this one before they're all overloaded.
Yep, well, that's what we're out here for.
Yeah.
Hey. What was it, 4 years in the making and one day too long of waiting to harvest and is what you get. But nothing we could do about it now.
Peaches look beautiful.
Yeah, they look great.
Ay.
Just lost our main branch of the tree. Really the trunk of it, kind of. Alright, well. Smiles. Hoorah.
Hoorah. We're new to caring for fruit trees, so this was a big learning experience for us. Jim pruned our trees for the first time this past spring, and he was just starting to feel like he was sort of getting the hang of what and how much of the tree to prune. This tree is gonna need an overhaul after this branch broke, and in hindsight, it would have been a good idea to thin the fruit earlier in the summer so that the branches like this one aren't so overwhelmed by the weight of the peaches. But we're grateful that we didn't lose the whole tree and we're still able to harvest a ton of peaches from its branches. If it feels soft, put it in here. If it feels firm, put it in there, okay? We purchased all of our fruit trees from Fedco out in Maine, and we recommend their trees to everyone. They're on the pricier side, but every tree that we've gotten from them has been such great quality. We only lost one of the 30 fruit trees we planted in this orchard, and that was from critters eating all of the bark off the base of the tree. And this is compared to a couple other fruit trees that we got from a local nursery that's still very reputable in our area, but out of those 2 trees, one didn't make it, and really for no apparent reason. This is definitely one of those areas where investing in quality for the long term is well worth it in our opinion. It's such a bummer to put the time and money into planting a tree only to have it die after a year or two and not really knowing why. Plus, looking through the Fedco catalog is just one of our favorite things to do every year because they offer so many unique heirloom varieties that are hard to find anywhere else.
Here we go. 3 more.
Hard stuff.
Last
We
three.
are ready!
It was a full afternoon harvesting peaches, and in the 90+ degree heat, I was quickly losing steam by the end. But we made it. And just as we were finishing up our last tree, the thunder started rolling in and we quickly scrambled to get all of our peaches safely inside before the downpour came.
Enjoy. All right.
Probably should have dumped them under their, they're all going to be making, yeah, all right. See you, chickens.
We were thrilled with the harvest. As we were harvesting, we separated them out by already ripe peaches that would need to be used right away and peaches that were still firm. With so many, this has been really helpful as we tackled preserving them this week, starting with the ripest and letting the others ripen and getting to them a few days later. And to be honest, peaches have been more challenging than most other fruits or vegetables that we've harvested and preserved, primarily because they're so delicate and ripen so quickly. Peaches that are firm one day can be very soft the next, and peaches at the bottom of the bin are likely to get squashed and go bad from a peach on top of it. And as someone who hates to see food go to waste, this is hard, but at least these peaches go to the compost or to the chickens. But this week has felt like a race to get several bins of peaches preserved as quickly as possible in the midst of everyday life.
I don't know, but I can
When it comes to preserving, this is not something that either of us grew up doing. I first taught myself to can tomato sauce in 2018 when our second son was only a month old and we were overflowing with tomatoes. It's been a process of slowly adding things to our repertoire since then. I'll be the first to admit that I see people online with hundreds and hundreds of jars of canned food and I think, I should be doing that. But then I realize we are growing and storing away a ton of food in a way that works for us. It doesn't need to look the same for everyone. We can some, freeze some, and dehydrate some. And I think the most important thing to remember when it comes to preserving food is to preserve it in a way that you are going to eat it. I can't stress that enough. The other things that I consider when we're preserving food is how can we preserve this in a way that will retain the most nutrients and is doable for my family. Because as a mom with 4 young kids and another due in a month and a half, I cannot do it all. I mentioned making plum sauce earlier, and that is one of my favorite ways to preserve all the things. Plums, peaches, I also do a similar thing for roasted tomatoes and apples. The beauty of making a sauce is that it's such an easy way to preserve a lot of something. There are tons of uses for it, and it's delicious without the need for added ingredients or extra sugar. These plums were giving me a run for my money because they were so overripe and they were clingstone plums, not freestone, so the juice was squirting everywhere, but the flesh was clinging so tightly to the pit that it made it a pretty frustrating task. However, in my aggravation, every time our kids popped over, they commented on how delicious it smelled and looked, and that was super motivating to keep going to get through them all. And I'm so glad we did because the result was delicious. After they cooked for about 8 hours, I blended them in our Vitamix, poured them into jars to can them. The only ingredient was the plums, and I love the simplicity of that. Whew. All right. It's a doozy. To make a fruit sauce like peach, plum, or applesauce, I start by removing the pit or the core from the fruit and then tossing the rest into a Dutch oven or a crock pot to slow cook. One of my favorite things about this method is that you can absolutely just leave the skins on without getting any of that gritty texture from the peel, because once it's cooked, you will end up just blending the fruit and juice in a blender. Not only does not having to peel everything make it way quicker and easier, it also preserves so many nutrients. Most fruit, peaches and plums included, contain a ton of extra antioxidants, polyphenols, and vitamins in their peel. So by discarding the peel, you're missing out on so much of the nutrition that the fruit offers. And especially because we don't spray our fruit at all, I wanted to make sure to keep them on to get all of that goodness in what we're eating. I have a basic Presto pressure canner and pressure can everything we make as opposed to water bath canning. I know many would say that water bath canning is easier, but when I learned how to can, I learned on a pressure canner, so that's what I know and it works well for us. This was the first year that we made the switch to using 4 jars canning lids. I'd heard great things about them for the last few years, but I got 100 wide mouth and 100 narrow mouth lids, and I have to say the quality is way better than the ball canning jar lids that I'd just been picking up from the local hardware store up until this point. I can see why people like them so much. I would add that it's helpful to use a high-powered blender like a Vitamix when keeping the skins on your fruit if you want them pureed without any of that gritty texture. I've tried using an immersion blender in the past, but it just doesn't cut it in the same way to get a nice, smooth, creamy texture. Kind of like the investment of the fruit trees that we talked about earlier, we invested in our Vitamix 12 or 13 years ago, and it's been such a good investment for us. It's more of an upfront cost, but it's been well worth it to be able to use it for all of the things that we want, and it's still going strong all of these years later. Yum, yum. I was surprised when I looked up plum sauce recipes that an Asian or Chinese savory plum sauce is actually a very common thing. So now that we have this basic plum sauce made, it's nice to know that you could add savory ingredients like garlic, onion, ginger, soy sauce, and chili sauce to make a savory or Asian version, or you could keep it sweet. We're gonna go on a more tart side. We love to mix this plum sauce with yogurt, use it as a topping for ice cream, or I'll even use it in place of jam on peanut butter and jelly. With our abundance of peaches this year, I'm canning quarts and quarts of peach sauce using the same method that I did for the plums. I'm excited for all of the possibilities when it comes to using this sauce. Several people have mentioned peach barbecue sauce, which sounds amazing. I'm excited to try that, as well as using it for things like salad dressings or to go with pork chops would be delicious, and then also keeping it sweet as a topping for yogurt, ice cream sundaes, or in desserts. When I think about preserving peaches, the number one thing that comes to mind is to peel the peaches and can peach slices. And it was absolutely my plan to add this to our list of ways I was planning to preserve these peaches. I just felt like I should, like a good canner would can peaches this way. But when I thought about it, I ended up changing course, scratched canned peaches from the list, and here's why. The main reason? I really don't like to eat canned peaches. I grew up with canned peaches and syrup in my lunch as a kid, and I'd be just as happy if I never ate them again. Now, I know there's something different about growing it and making it yourself, and you could easily can it in a way without a ton of sugar in the syrup, but I just wasn't all that excited about having a bunch of canned peaches, besides maybe using them in things like crisps and cobblers and things like that. The second reason was I really wasn't that excited about removing the skins from the peaches. Like I mentioned earlier about all of the added nutrition in the skin, I like to leave it on if possible. And then the third reason, and probably the biggest factor, was the time factor and wanting to get the best bang for our buck out of our time as possible. All of the work to peel, slice, and then can was sounding pretty tedious with how many peaches we were working with. Pretty cool, huh? So instead of canning peaches, I've been freezing them instead. And what I like about this is that not only is it way faster and I can keep the skin on, I can still use frozen peach slices in things like crisps, cobblers, and pie fillings, but with them being frozen, they'll also work perfectly for making things like smoothies, ice creams, and sorbets, which we do a lot of. The downside to freezing is that you need to have extra space in your freezer, but we actually have plenty of space right now, so this shouldn't be a problem for us for this year. To freeze the peach slices, I just cut them in half, remove the pit, and then slice them into thicker, chunkier slices. You could even just throw them in halved if you don't want to worry about slicing them. These are a variety of peaches called Reliance peaches, and they're a freestone variety, so that makes this so easy. I place them in a single layer on a baking sheet with parchment paper or a silicone baking mat underneath so they don't stick, and then flash freeze them in the freezer. This keeps them from sticking together in one big clump. Once they're frozen, or the next morning, I take them out and store them in quart or gallon-sized freezer bags. The other way that we wanted to try preserving our peaches was dehydrating them. Our kids love dried fruit, but it can be hard to find without added ingredients and sugar, so we tried making our own. I wanted to slice them pretty thin so they wouldn't take forever to dry out, and as uniform as possible, around 1/4 inch I was aiming for. Then I dunked them in this lemon juice water mixture. It was just 1 cup of each, so this both helps preserve the color and the nutrients of the peaches. Then I laid them out on these drying racks. We don't actually have a dehydrator or a freeze dryer. We've highly considered both and have thought many times that they would probably make our lives a lot easier, but haven't pulled the trigger yet. Space is one of the big things holding me back, and just the capacity of learning and incorporating another new thing feels challenging in this already very full season of life. Instead, I made these in our oven, which the aga is actually really nice because it goes all the way down to 100 degrees Fahrenheit, so it's pretty comparable to dehydrator temperatures as opposed to most ovens, which only go down to about 170 degrees Fahrenheit. My one regret is that I wish I had put a silicone baking mat or parchment paper over the top of the drying racks, because when they were done, we took them out and they were not easy to pull off the rack. However, they were a big hit.
Mommy!
I don't think I'll do a ton more of these dehydrated peaches because they were a bit tedious, but instead, because we'll have a ton of the peach sauce canned, I can use that in the future to make fruit leather for the same type of dehydrated sweet treat without any added ingredients or sugar. They're right here.
Oh.
Thank you. When it comes to preserving season, the other thing that can make it very challenging is trying to figure out how to incorporate all of this extra work into an already full day. The rhythm that we found that works for us is that after the kids head to bed in the evenings and Jim and I have a little bit of time before going to bed ourselves, we'll use this time to get a batch of peaches sliced for the freezer and going in the slow cooker. And then early in the morning, I'll make a quick batch of peach sauce and can that and bag up the frozen peaches. Then if I have enough time, I'll quickly slice up another round to get that slow cooking all day to can in the evening and more peaches sliced for the freezer that I can bag in the evening. I really appreciate that doing it this way still frees me up during the day for the most part to do all of the daily things that need to happen. And because I know this preserving season is only a season, we can set aside the extra time in the mornings and evenings to get it done. Plus, when you reframe it as a peach date night, it makes it all the better.
It's our flying. Hey! We got it in.